What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blood Moon Box, a monthly subscription box service for period pads and tampons to help support all humans who have a cycle for that time of the month, and no need to run to a store to mix and match period supplies that don't cater to the entire ebbs and flows of your cycle. There are 2 box options based on your cycle, light and medium, and then heavy. And in addition to the period products, you'll also receive PMS herbal teas, a candle, and some other items for your time of the month. You can reserve a box by navigating to bloodmoonbox.com. And bloodmoonbox.com is on a mission to destigmatize the idea of period blood. At Blood Moon Box, they believe that it is the time to honor the enchanting magic within every person who has a cycle. So join us in embracing the magic of your cycle with Blood Moon Box. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Elizabeth Ralph, a thought leader in the financial and money energetic space. Elizabeth helps her students become savvy, aligned investors by changing their stories and relationship with money and creating sustainable wealth strategies of their own. And her journey began several years as a financial trader. And in her successful, high-stress dream career, she realized most people have not lived in the way they want because they've been under the spell that freedom is something you're given, not something you define. I'm so excited to welcome Elizabeth to the show. She's been highly recommended by so many previous guests, and I've also listened to many of her podcasts, and she's just an absolute has an incredible mindset when it comes to money and the spirituality of money, really. So to kick it off, welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is absolutely amazing just to be here and sharing the space with you and all of your amazing listeners.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. So to kick it off, what does money mean to you?
Oh gosh. Money means to me ease, empowerment, and expansiveness. I think those 3 things. I think I've always been connected to money in a kind of a different way. I say sometimes that I can feel money. And I think, one of the things that I love helping other people do is to realize that it's not different from a lot of the other things that bring you joy and bliss and all of that. It's actually, it's a frequency that we have felt but it's a frequency that sometimes is hard for us to hold on to because of our prior conditioning. But it feels like ease to me.
Wow. So I want to double click on that because that's not something most people, I think, in mainstream culture think about when they think of money. There's sort of a lack mentality, a scarcity mentality around it. So, talk a little bit more about what that means to you and like when you started feeling that sense of ease and expansiveness. I really want to understand that because I think conceptually there's so many associations where it's like the opposite is true for many people. They feel a sense of deprivation, right? And contraction. So, yeah, I'd love to learn more about how you started associating these ideas with money.
Well, I think that people want to feel closer to money than they really are. But I think that the way that we've been taught to handle money is it gets in the way. And I think, if you look at, we were mainly taught that you needed someone to help you manage your money. You needed someone to teach you how to do all of these high level things. And I think that money has been made to be really complex. I think one of the reasons that I feel at ease with money is that I've never seen it as being anything complex. And I think the more that we really bring it down to earth, so to speak, and like really ground in with money, then I think that we get to take this fictitious layer off of money that doesn't really belong anymore. We don't live in a society where investing is held behind a veil anymore. It's accessible to everyone. It's just that, so I would say that the technology and the world around us has actually caught up more so than our mental aspect of money.
Mm, fascinating. And so, what about, people who right now are having difficulty making or managing money? What would you say to them? Just like some simple ways maybe to get started or even just shift their mindset?
Well, I'll tell you because, I worked in the financial industry for a lot of years, and then I've been running my own program for about 4 years. And so, what this has done is it's allowed me to sort of extract the data, like to really, really look at like what's bothering people, like what are they asking, what's holding people back. And one of the number one things that I hear is that people don't invest and build wealth because number one is they don't feel like they know enough. And the second thing is that people feel like they don't have enough money to start. And so, just touching, on the second one, it's kind of ironic because, like, not having enough money to start building money, well, investing is what builds money. So, we saw this definitely during the pandemic when, the net worth of billionaires quadrupled because they don't rely on earned income. They rely on assets to build their wealth, which is, things that they've already set up that are basically making money for them. So, I think that for people who find it difficult to get started, what I really teach people is it's not that it's that there's anything out there that's difficult. I mean, honestly, you can look up how to open an investing account on Google. Like a lot of this stuff you can look up, but then you have to ask yourself, where's the gap? Why aren't people doing it? Well, I don't think that their current self identity supports them actually seeing themselves as someone who could do this. So I don't actually think it's lack of knowledge. I think it's a lack of willingness to break the old connection to the self identity, which then would allow in the new self identity of someone who has I would say, a different standard. They kind of have draw the line in the sand and say, well, I'm no longer going to be reliant solely on earned income. Even if I have $100, I'm going to invest 2% of that. And then I'm just going to keep magnifying that. And the momentum will actually take itself. So I think that for people who are struggling, how do I manage money now? I would say actually get out of the now.
Fascinating. This is such an important point. I really want to like highlight this because you spoke about identity, which I'm a big Neville Goddard fan and spent a lot of time thinking about identity. I think because there's a lot of, I guess camps that say like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And a lot of it, yes, there is a financial component to it, but I agree with you in the identity piece. It's like just feeling as if, that there's a deservingness to the external reality of material wealth. So I'm just, I want to double click on that piece and how that's actually shown up in your program in terms of helping people shift. And what does it take to actually shift one's identity?
It actually takes a deep desire, to be honest with you. And, just even tying in the Neville Goddard aspect of it. I mean, he talks a lot about imagination and how we don't really fully use our imagination. And I think that I would go one step further to that and say that we have to realize that there's a difference between imagination and believability. So
Mm.
we can imagine something, and let's say we have a practice where we journal, or a lot of us here are spiritual seekers, right? And so we each have our things that bring us closer to our own selves. But what happens is when we're perhaps not journaling or not sitting on the mat or doing something like that, what happens is we default back to whatever frequency is our norm, which our self identity is supporting, and we don't actually carry the energetic believability to inhabit a different frequency for more of the time. So if you think about it in terms of when you really, really believe something, like you have it with a knowingness. Like for me, when I was 29, I set a goal that I was going to be making six figures by the time I was 30. Well, I think I was a temporary contractor at the time. There was no valid, call it realistic reason that I would have been able to achieve that. And then I actually forgot about it. And then 3 months before I turned 31, I was going through papers and I saw my tax return. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I did it. And so I had such a deep knowingness, though, that it was like I didn't need to figure out the how. I was able to let that go. And it was the believability that carried it. So that existed. If you're talking about the quantum field, that existed on a higher frequency because it was imagination backed by believability, backed by, again, allowing it.
Wow. This is fascinating. And you also retired at the age of 39, which is like really not that much more time from 30. So I imagine you had to make massive strides to go from that to also retirement. So I love the idea also of this energetic believability. And I think that's the hardest part, right? It's not an intellectual exercise. It's about a knowingness, and that has a lot to do with trust rather than the mind finding, logical answers. So I think it's also just like a new way of being in the world, right? Of operating in the world. But yeah, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you also retired at 39, um, and your journey.
Yeah, well, so I loved the job. I mean, I worked on a financial trading floor, and so I designed financial products for large corporations and traded oil and natural gas, and it was an amazing job. I knew it at the time that it was an amazing job, but it was 12 hours a day. It was like I was living in the matrix. So I would go in, no personal calls, no desks even. It was like all just one big desk and like people sitting like 2 feet away from you, and that was my life. Well, I knew that I didn't want to be doing that, say, in 15 years, right? So I knew that I was thinking, okay, by my mid 40s, I'm like, I don't want to be freaking doing this. So what I did is I said, okay, can I basically buy my way out of it? And so I used a few different things. So and here's something that I think your listeners can get started on right now, is that most people think that in order to build wealth, there's just one way to do it, and that's increase your income. Well, that's just like having one lever. You have more levers than that. You have your income, you also have cost of living, and then you also have investing. And so what I did is I basically used all three of these, and I brought my own creativity into this. So, yes, I did have the financial knowledge, which helped me because I designed the plan, but I brought my creativity into it in terms of like, instead of it just being a plain vanilla wealth plan, which actually is too spreadsheety, it's like too boring for me. Um, I brought in my love of horses. And so I have always had a special connection to horses. And I knew that I wanted to help horses. And I had this like vision of, well, when I'm not working in corporate, I'll be helping all of these horses. Well, I didn't want to help them like, physically, like, cleaning out the stalls and stuff like that. I knew that I would be helping them on a financial level. So what I did is I said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And that became part of the wealth plan. So then what I did after that is I started buying investment property. And then I actually opened one of the first Airbnbs in San Diego. I think it was the fourth one. Actually, I opened it before Airbnb existed, and they contacted me and said, "Can we please come to your house and take photos for you? And will you be on our website?" So
Wow.
I didn't even know that this was gonna even work, but it did. And what I ended up doing is donating a portion of the proceeds to horse rescues. Well, here's where the magic comes in: is that you know the plan actually got bigger than me, and I know that that's why I was able to do what I did in such a relatively short time, because I didn't realize that by putting my why, basically my strong connection to horses behind it, and going, okay, I'm not there yet to fully help them in the way that I think I can, but I'm gonna at least do what I can now. By doing that, I didn't realize that it would attract so many people from all over the world to the Airbnb. And then people were leaving envelopes of cash in the Airbnb saying, please give this to the horses. And it was amazing. I was meeting people all over the world. That is when you're allowing the universe to step in and also help with the wealth plan. And I think that that's kind of the magic sauce, if you will, that I try and help people get to, is bringing in who they are into it, but using the foundational wealth principles as kind of a structural guide.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love that story. Just thinking about horses as well, and giving back. I mean, I think that that feels like a part of wealth building that a lot of people don't talk about. The idea of giving to get, the idea of tithing, and I love that this is part of the story, that there's such a desire for also everyone in the field, right, of who stayed in your Airbnb to give back. How do you define wealth, right? Because wealth is very different than money and maybe even abundance. How do you define wealth, and then also how would you teach people how to build wealth when it comes to, you spoke about assets, cost of living, and investing. Yeah, so I'm just curious, how do you define wealth, and then how would you create like the template for building it?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I define wealth as money neutrality. And this is one of the concepts that I teach. And to me, this is the greatest opening to money. And that is, it's actually based on the spiritual principle of showing up needing nothing to receive all. So you know how, like, when let's say someone needs your help, they need to talk to you about something or whatever. The more you can sit down next to them and just truly be there for them unconditionally, like you're not bringing your own stuff into it, you're not trying to give them advice, you're not trying to, like, you have all these expectations. It's a very clean sort of conduit, right? And so to me, wealth works exactly the same way. And so when I am in full money neutrality, when I can actually step into a situation not needing anything, then, and this, by the way, is why wealthy people just get exponentially wealthier, is because they can walk into situations with neutrality because they don't technically need the money. So I walk into it as, I'm very neutral on this. I don't need someone to make a decision one way or the other, which allows me to be fully present. That to me is wealth. And wealth isn't something that you just one day you're like, okay, I'm wealthy. And then I think people think that, just one day it's like you wake up and you're like, I'm wealthy and it's done. It's a bouncing ball, it's ever changing. I mean, when I retired, my cost of living, is very different than what it is now. I have horses now, they're more expensive. Than I didn't have horses then. I'm okay with that because I've adjusted. But you see what I'm saying? Like, you're constantly redefining your definition of wealth, but wealth for me is a feeling. And that feeling is always being able to show up in every single moment in full neutrality about it, no matter what the situation is. I mean, I've got remodels going on in my house, and I don't know if you've done remodels, but they always go over. Always. It's crazy. And so it definitely blows away my contractors when they think that they're going to have a conversation I'm going to be upset about. And I'm like, nope, you know what? It's fine. We'll make it up somewhere else, or we'll just move this around, whatever else. And they're like, really?
That's amazing. Wow, Elizabeth. It's interesting because I think this topic is something I feel like a lot of people don't actually want to spend time understanding, right? Like they don't want to actually take a really close look at their financial wealth and health. And so I'm curious, what are some of the themes that you have seen people struggle with when it comes to actually taking a look, and then also what you've seen people struggle with when they come through your program?
Well, I mean, I think you hit upon something huge there, which is that I don't think that people actually want to do this work because they don't know who they're going to be on the other side of it. So if you come into this thinking that being a multimillionaire is greedy or bad or something like that, then you can't have that you can have that in your imagination, but you can't have it in the believability spectrum. You can't have knowingness behind it. And so I think sometimes on paper people want to be wealthy, but I think people are actually really scared of who they could become if they were wealthy and what that means about them or what someone else would think about them. Therefore, they are energetically blocking it for an entire lifetime. So that's some of the work that we do and we go really deep on. And that really ties back into kind of what we talked about with the self identity, which is if you want to be wealthy, then you need to be okay breaking pretty much all the structures around you as you see them right now because you're going to need to. It's kind of like, the old school houses where they have like the axe in the glass box. Like nobody wants to break the glass and grab the axe, but like you're going to need to do that. Like it's you're not just going to get to pick up one or two couple of new habits and then suddenly become the multimillionaire because it's a completely different vibration.
Right. Right. Wow. I'm sort of, yeah, and I'm sort of also just thinking about even the gender piece of this, which, we can go into it. We can, we can, remove this question, but, I'm curious, because women have traditionally had less access to, I'd say, like senior leadership positions. And we can just kind of anecdotally see that play out, right? The people running many of the Fortune 500 companies, the distribution is heavily skewed towards male. So I'm sort of curious, do you see a distinction between women and men when they think about wealth and when they think about money in your own practice, and then also just, from a kind of mainstream perspective?
I do. I see a lot of difference, and I think this might be a simple answer, but I think it's solid in terms of kind of what I've seen out there, which is there's a strong correlation between wealth and internal confidence. And so I think that creates its own gender bifurcation right there. There's also some role playing that is still going on, within relationships. I would say it's kind of a hangover effect of our previous generations, but because a lot of us were raised by parents who maybe one person stayed at home, or maybe one was the quote unquote breadwinner, and all that. So we saw these roles play out, but yet the whole entire world has changed around us. So we no longer get to buy a house for $50,000. We no longer get to have to support two kids on one income, right? Yet the gender roles are still there with that. And so now what I'm seeing is that even if you have two people working, there is still this role playing going on whereby um, one person could act weaker than they really are in order to make the other person feel more needed or maybe more in their power. And I see when I see women come into power with this and really, really take this on, I mean, honestly, no one can hold a candle to them. But so many of them think, well, this is not my role, or I haven't done this before, or what if I make a mistake? Like, I rarely hear men going into this, like, what if I make a mistake? But I hear that a lot
Mm,
from women.
wow. Fascinating. That makes a lot of sense, just in terms of cultural norms. And so I have also been thinking about your coaching program and specifically the breakthrough that needs to happen in order to move to the next level. So, what is behind that breakthrough? Like, what do you see people really shift within that breakthrough? And I don't know if you can, but if you could share a story or an anecdote of where you've seen people kind of move through, like into a different identity to get to that, what you're describing, this next level.
Oh, it's such a beautiful question. Yeah. Um, the breakthroughs that I see, and from a 3D matrix level, they're going to be based on different things because everyone comes in at a different place. Like some people who come into the program are like they have a lot of fear. Some people come into it and what they're really needing is more clarity with money. And then some people are like, hey, I'm ready to get started with investing. It's a bit of a one-stop shop. And so I've designed it where it's not a linear. It's kind of like you come in as you come in. And I always encourage that too. I'm like, it's not about time, it's who are you right now? And I try and help people define where they are now from a place of non-judgment. And then there are no regrets. So that's one of the first things is full forgiveness because you can't swim the river with a bag of rocks. And so have to let that go. But where I see I would say just from a 50,000 foot level, the transformation point really occurs after um, someone has done something that they have been holding at arm's length distance for like a long time for whatever reason. Their mind has justified that they can't do that, or they don't want to do it, or they don't have time to do it. Now, it could seem on the outside like something small, like, buying a stock or something. But what happens is I see this shift where people have achieved that. Then what it does is it creates the 3D evidence for them because all the answers are within them. I'm just a guide, right? And so it creates the 3D evidence that their mind has been looking for to go, oh my gosh, like I really can do this. Then what they shift into is they're seeing things more from the observer role. That's when you can actually get more into the advanced money principles that I was talking about with the money neutrality, because neutral is the observer. And so when you're able to actually look back in on your money self, and I hear it a lot, and I look for it with the students because they go, oh, well, such and such happened today, and that would have really bothered me a week ago, but it doesn't bother me anymore. It's like not knowing themselves anymore. And then that's actually when you get into the accelerated factor because, we talked about my timeline. I retired at 39. Well, I don't even think you need that much time, to be honest with you. I think that you could do what I did. I think anybody can do it in 3 to 4 years if they really, really want it and desire it and they're willing to go deep and sort of look back in as that observer, because that's the greatest lens. That's when the lessons are given to you faster, if that makes sense.
Right, right. Absolutely. I love that you talk about this nonlinear kind of component to this process, right? And because I think that we're so trained in culture to perceive things in a linear fashion. Oh, I have to work 30 years in order to get this type of, retirement. And what you're talking about really is like quantum leaps, right? And really shifting state so that you're experiencing just a completely different sense of self and a sense of reality. And that the piece about the observer is huge because I think a lot of us are so focused and fixated on the 3D, the material world, and we're not really able to perceive the 360 view of everything going on within us and in the external world. And that's fascinating. So what about like in terms of looking back, like what are some of the things that maybe surprised you the most since you've been on this journey?
My own personal money journey.
Yeah, or it could be like with others as well, like through the program.
Well, I mean, I can answer that both ways. I think for me, what has surprised me the most is that um, I never knew that I was supposed to be a conduit for this information. This business has been my greatest gift because um, I feel like everything I've done up to this point, like basically, I feel like I was just positioning myself the entire time in order to be able to do this. Because I even heard like I kept hearing the same phrase throughout my 30s, and it I mean, taken in a singular form, it made no sense, but yet it made perfect sense, and it kept coming back up to me over and over again, and it fit perfectly every time. And the phrase was, "You're going to need options in your 40s." And so I just kept going back to that and back to that. And so I could just kept, it was almost like my tether. And so now my only job is to how can I energetically allow more? Because I know I'm here to help spiritual people become wealthy. Like I know that. And so that's been the biggest thing that surprised me about my journey because I wasn't even gonna start this business. I was at a kid's birthday party and I there was some friends there, and we were all sort of standing around the fire, and I was writing a book at the time because I love to write, and I mean I was just fried after I left corporate, and so I'd taken a couple of years off to write, and she was like, "Can you help me with my money?" And I said, "Oh, I don't do that." And she said, "Well, but I've got this money here, and I don't know what to do with it, and blah blah blah." So, anyways, finally she's like convinced me I was going to help her with her money, right? So it was the funniest thing because I had no idea what I was going to do. So I ended up driving to her house. So I said, "Okay, I'll help you, we'll do 8 sessions." I drove to her house. I remember sitting out in front of her house and I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to talk to these people about? So anyways, I went through it, and I did know one thing though. Before I walked up to the door, I said, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it my way, which meant I'm not just going to go in there with the standard money principles like you must do this, you must do that. Because the thing is, I'm not a financial advisor for a reason. I love financial advisors. I mean, if you have one, I'm not saying you don't have one, but I've taken those exams, but I don't want to be that. You know what I'm saying? So I knew if I was going to do it, I had to do it different. And then I got a letter in the mail. It was like really thick and had like a bunch of photographs in it. And it was of photographs of she and her wife had bought a cabin in Big Bear. And the letter was basically, it was photos of the cabin. And it was, "You've changed our life because now our 2 children are going to get to grow up coming to this cabin on the weekends. And that's going to be like their memories." So I thought, well, if there's a sign from the universe, there it is, right? So I think the surprising thing for me is that it definitely chose me. Um, I think the most surprising thing for when it comes to the program and the students is honestly, and I hate to even say this because see, I know like money doesn't speak linear time like we do. We're the ones that are putting this time on it. But like even me, I'm like, I mean, things happen fast. And I think that's what surprises me the most is that when I hear how quickly it's happening, and I feel so happy for them, and it's become like this big circle because their abundance becomes my abundance, and if you know what I mean, it's just like this whole,
Mm,
which is what wealth is. It's just we're just not completing the circle usually.
right. Wow. Oh, that's such a beautiful story. I love that, like, when you speak about how your path kind of comes to you, rather than you go looking for it. And that's just like such a testament to the flow of the universe, that we shouldn't be kind of going and grasping out over things. Like they should be coming to us. Especially if we allow them to. So that's really, really powerful. Wow.
Yes, absolutely, and I think one of the hard things with that, though, is that, like, when I first started this business, I wasn't making money hand over fist, and that's me, the money person, right? I was still trying to figure it out, and when I first started this, I was hiding. Like, I wasn't sure how I was gonna do this, and so I wasn't really stepping forward with my authentic self, and so for everyone out there who's like, "How do I make this work with, my business and sales and marketing and all of that?" Like, I can't speak for everyone, but I would say what really, really worked for me is that I basically just the marketing came second. Like, what came for once I dropped all of that and I just stepped forward with my true authentic self and really stepped into what I was just speaking about, like, this is just what I'm here to do. I don't effing care about anything else. I don't care what people think about it or whatever. Everything changed. I mean, I'm talking about my business 10x'd within 3 weeks. Then I added on the marketing, and now the marketing just becomes really, it's just at that point, it's just an expansion point of who you are, and I think that's one of the things that I'm so grateful for is that I realized that, you know?
So I love this point. You said, you didn't really care anymore about what it took, that this was what you came here to do, like that level of conviction. You said after that, that's when things started to really shift. Can you speak a little
Mhm.
bit more about that moment? Because I think that's exactly the neutrality, the identity piece. It's like kind of all of it coming together. Where I think a lot of people, there's a hook into the dependency of things, like, oh, it has to go this way, or if
Yeah.
I'm not getting what I want in the 3D, then I then maybe it's not for me. Like the questioning, right? It seems like you just let go of any doubt.
Well, yeah, I let go of the doubt, because the authentic version of me spoke louder in that moment. Like, it was almost like if you think of it on a stage, like that version of me stepped forward, and it was like, "Okay, well, I have to go with this." But then, there's also this aspect of I was willing to break the old way that I was doing it. And, this has actually happened so much in my life, especially over the last year. Like, everything around me has like broken over the last year. But everything that for me, everything amazing that's come into my life has been preceded by something that completely just blows up and breaks. And it's not the breaking process that's the issue, it's how badly are we willing to fight it. And I
Mm,
think sometimes we come down to, and this is where this self identity, even cultural kind of thing, it's like we're holding on to things so badly that we think are good for us, but they're only good for the past version of us. So there's a disconnect between the new version of us and yet holding these old, whether you call them patterns, habits, or like this belief that we know how it's done. And so I had to completely let go of the way that I was running the business before and just get into neutrality. Like, that is the power of neutrality, right? If you're in true neutrality, you're not holding on to your belief system of it has to work this way. And you're also allowing, and this is one of the big blocks that people have with money, is that they pre-decide how money can come to them. Oh, well, it has to come through to me through my business, or has to look like this. Why? When a wealthy person steps in the room with a bunch of other wealthy people, what are they doing? They're looking for new opportunities. So, how can we bring that down into our daily life is really the key with it.
yeah, powerful. Wow. So Why do you think that this subject is important? And, why did you dedicate so much of your life and life force really to this work?
You know, honestly, like it's kind of like I said before, I really didn't even think about it. I have always, I've always felt money. I've always had, like, I can feel the market. And the market is just a global representation of just, millions and millions of people making decisions in that moment. And so if you can feel energy, then you can feel money. And if you can feel money, you can feel decisions, you can feel the market, all of that. So um, it's really just a process of how can I translate this to other people? Because I think ultimately the greatest currency is energy. And I think that the new paradigm that we're already living in and we're just sort of acclimating to right now, um, energy is the currency. And so right now, by you stepping into building wealth, and actually I see it as like almost like a preparing process, then what you're doing is you're buying back that opportunity, if you will, because the less you rely on earned income, then the more you can get up that morning and not have to do anything that you don't feel energetically connected to. I think that's the wealth of the future. And the dollar wealth right now is available for those who are preparing for that.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I like the idea of waking up and just, deciding where to put your energy as opposed to reacting really to life. So, what about kind of people, mentors, others who have maybe influenced you on this path? What other resources might be helpful for people who might want to get started in this, or people that you could recommend in terms of those that have just inspired you?
I definitely, a lot of what the foundation of what I invest in, teach, all of that is definitely the Warren Buffett going back to investing in good companies that you just hold on for the long term. Nothing wrong with, short term investing, day trading, options, things like that. But it's just not my cup of tea, not my energy. I really focus more on how can you actually I like effortless money. And so everything I do comes back to how can I make this more effortless? So if I'm buying a stock and I'm putting that into a portfolio and it has a reason to be there, I'm energetically connected to the stock. It has a reason to be there. It has its place. If there's an intention behind it, then I really don't need to worry about it anymore. It's kind of like that knowingness that I had about, okay, I was just going to be at six figures by the time I was 30. Like it's that same level of knowingness. So if you can actually apply that, which I would say that teacher is within you, it's like asking yourself, like, what do I need to clean up in order to have that knowingness about the thing that I'm about to invest in? So I would say that's probably number one. And I would say people who my go-to is definitely Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle, Guru Jagat. I mean, she was one of the ones who helped me with the big shift in the business. Like, I just had a feeling that connecting with her, and she's the one who created Rama Institute. I did a workshop with her in April of 2021, and I tell you, I just went into it so open. Again, we talk about neutrality. I was like, okay, this is it. And she was like, "Oh, you need all new branding." She was like, "You're not talking to the people that you're supposed to be serving." And she just gave me these lists of things. Well, I just boom, boom, boom. It's like I said, I broke everything. I completely did it, and then it just changed everything. So for me, it's not having a bunch of people that you're listening to. It's who are you going to go vertical on? Because that's where I see the biggest shifts is within people is just going vertical and that full commitment on that time and space with that person.
Mm. I love that. And you have recommended a lot of people that I absolutely adore. Ellen Watts and Guru Jagat. I never met her, but definitely know her work and have just been a big lifelong kind of fan of Kundalini Yoga. So amazing, amazing. So, what do you want to tell our listeners about wealth and well being? I mean, what would you say is the main takeaway here?
I think the main takeaway would be that um, if you are wanting to and desiring to create more value in the world, to just step forward, kind of what we talked about here with your authentic self, then allow money to help you in that. Like, stop seeing money as the circumstance of money, which is then a barricade. Um, I would say get into a flow of money whereby that the money is sort of the momentum behind it. Maybe even think about, the story with the horses, like, what is your version of that? Like, where is that magic carpet ride that you can bring in? Because when we talk about effortless money, like, we're not going to do something for a long period of time that doesn't feel effortless, because we can't, like, life just overruns it and other things become more important. So what feels so effortless to you that includes, like, the combination of giving value and money? And don't worry about the amount, because the amount of money is simply just the result. You're the energy creator first. And so your job is to create the energy. And then actually, the more you let go of the expectations of the amount, the more space you allow for that, because you're the money conduit. So the more space you're allowing within that conduit for it to come in.
Yes, love that. So, Elizabeth, where can people find you? Are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about your work, your programs, and just what you're up to?
I would definitely say the podcast, so the Spiritual Investor Podcast. I go deep there. My goal with each episode is to, how can I help people get one step further in their journey? It's almost like, when I started this podcast, I envisioned it as, how can people come and have a quick, they're pretty short, and it's like just an energetic hit that will allow them to go back in their day, and then maybe at a different frequency. So I would definitely say start with that. As far as the programs that we offer and things like that, you just go to elizabethralph.com, or you can go to Instagram, Elizabeth Ralph. So same thing, just my first and last name. And we kind of have a range there, something. We have a 5-day audio that's, free, that you can get started on. We have the Spiritual Investor Program, and that's definitely a deep dive, something that will provide a structure around you can keep coming back to. But I've really tried to create things for people. As I said earlier, I really like to just meet people where they are, and everybody's going to show up different with that. So I would encourage you just to kind of feel out the things. And we also have an August live coming up that I would say, where I work with people for about 90 minutes live in a group. And so that's really, really fun. That's actually one of my favorite things that we just started doing this year.
Amazing. Very cool. Well, we'll include everything in the show notes so that people can, find you easily and stay in touch with you as well. And your IG, remind me the name again.
Yeah, so it's Elizabeth Ralph. So just all one word.
Perfect. Amazing. Okay. So we'll include that all in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time, Elizabeth. This was so wonderful. So wonderful to feel so inspired, and you seem to make this work very effortless. So it's really, really exciting. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. This is amazing.
Oh, thank you. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about spiritual investing with Elizabeth Ralph, and you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.